I am going to learn French and you are going to make money from it. This video is an update for this challenge. So if you have no idea what this is about, you go there, you check the video, and then you come back. I'm gonna wait for you. That's it. Let's get started. Ha! It's been 2 weeks since I started learning French for my challenge, and I already can tell you that I do not like French. No, I'm joking. What I can tell you is that these 2 weeks have been quite hard and difficult. But let's go step by step. Let's start with the planning. If you are one of my students or you're somehow related to me or my method, you know that one of the very first things we do when we try to learn a new language is to divide the language into 7 different parts. In my method, we call them the 7 features of the language. That is listening, reading, writing, speaking, fluency, pronunciation, and vocabulary. And from that point, we start creating the work plan, where we decide how many days per week we want to work in the target language, how many minutes we want to spend every day, blah, 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 blah. For these first weeks, I have not done that. Why? Because that works when you already have a little bit of knowledge for the language. You can start listening, reading, writing, and speaking the language, even though you still struggle with it, but you can go with it. At this very moment, my level of French is 0. Like 0. Bonjour mon amour, je m'appelle croissant. So when you start to learn a language from scratch, I always recommend my students to take the first 2-3 weeks to really learn the basics. And careful here, I'm telling you, learn the basics, not just know the basics. When you know the basics, you know just how it works. For example, if you're learning Spanish, you know that the gender A equals feminine, O equals masculine. That's good. Really learning the basics, or as I like to call it, mastering the basics, means that you really know everything about that. That in-depth knowledge will help you to go from beginner to intermediate and from intermediate to advanced. If you just know the basics, you're gonna get stuck on the intermediate level forever. Coming back to the gender, you know that O equals masculine, A equals feminine, but then you find words like césped, grass, that ends with D. What is that? Or ataúd, coffin. What is that? Masculine or feminine? Or path, peace, or arroz, rice, or many other words that do not end either with O or A. So that's what I mean exactly by mastering the basics, not just reviewing the gender, the present tense, this basic stuff that will allow you to speak fast. Really understanding how the language works and really knowing all the tiny secrets. So that way, when you get to be an intermediate level, you don't struggle with those things and you can jump quickly to the advanced level. So that's basically what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. For the last 2 weeks, I've been focusing on getting the vibe of French and mastering the basics of the language. For example, pronunciation, how to pronounce all those weird sounds in French. For example, basic grammar stuff, basic vocabulary, the present tense in French, or the numbers, for example. I'm gonna tell you how I worked all these things in just a second, but now we're talking about the plan. And the plan was that for the first 2 weeks, I would master the basics of French, which I have done. And now I'm gonna start with the second stage of the plan, which is creating the work plan. I have not done it yet. I'm going to create it now, and in the next update, you will see how I create my work plan, how I structure my learning, and you will see how we get to a higher level in a target language. Pronunciation is freaking hard in French. French, like English, is a non-phonetical language. That means that you don't read the language as you write it. and that is always like a different level of difficulty. I speak 5 languages and 4 of them are phonetical: Spanish, Valencian, Italian and Esperanto. All of them are spoken as you write them. The only one that I speak that is non-phonetical is English. But when I learned English, I was very young, I was very happy, I was very motivated, and learning a non-phonetical language was not difficult. Anyway, what I've been doing to practice my pronunciation is getting to YouTube. Of course, I don't want to use like a blog post, a written post, because I want to hear the pronunciation of French. So I went to YouTube and I checked some videos that showed me the sounds of French. Not words, not sentences, the sounds. Again, the idea is to master the basics. So on those videos, we reviewed one by one all the letters in French, all the sounds in French, and then the combinations of letters and vowels in French. So if you don't speak French, I'm gonna tell you how this works. In French, you can put like 17 letters all together, like A, O, U, X, O, Y, E, Z, X, whatever, and you pronounce all those 17 letters like So of course you don't only need to just learn the letters of the alphabet like you would do in Spanish. In Spanish you review the 27 letters of the alphabet, the 27 sounds, and you're good to pronounce and speak Spanish with a perfect accent. In French you need to know the sounds of the letters and the combination of the letters, and that, I don't know why, it's been a titanic effort for me. I thought that it would not be that difficult, but it's been difficult. Anyway, after 2 weeks of practicing the sounds and the words and all that stuff, I'm starting to get comfortable with that. To learn the numbers in French, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I had to change as well my way of approaching the numbers. Usually, for all the languages that I learn, I basically just learn the written form of the numbers. Why? Because usually I learn phonetical languages and just you know how to write it, then you know how to pronounce it. And even more, most of the languages that I speak have a logic for the numbers. For example, Spanish, you say 30 is 30, 32 is 32, 30 and 2. Quite logic. When it comes to French, first, you've got one way to write the number. Second, you've got a different way to pronounce the number. And even more, when you get to 70, 80, 90, you need to start making math. 80 is not 80, is 4 times 20. Why? I don't know. So those 3 things combined made me change my approach to learn the numbers. So basically I went again to YouTube. I checked some videos on YouTube where I could see the spelling of the word, and I of course took notes and I tried to memorize the spelling, then mastering the sound and the pronunciation of the number, and then finding the patterns, and to be honest, it was quite good. I'm not complaining. I thought I would have way more problems that I had with numbers. I thought that I would struggle a lot with 4 times 26, blah. And basically I found it quite logical, even though it makes no sense at all. But I don't know, my brain accepted nicely the fact that for when you try to say 96, you say 4 times 20, 16. So for example, numbers like 71 would be 60, 11, 71. For example, 84 would be 4 times 24, 84, 84. And numbers like 99 would be 4 times 20, 19, 99. Quite easy. I don't know why, but easy. For the basic vocabulary and grammar, I was just checking the things that I found. I was not actively looking for words. By no means I went on Google and I wrote list of 100 most common words in French. Please do not do that. I tell this to all my students. You have to have a relationship between what you're trying to study, what you're trying to memorize, and you. So if you try to memorize something without context, something that you don't give a damn about it, thing that is not interesting to you, then you're not gonna learn it. Maybe you're gonna memorize it in the short-term memory and you're gonna forget it 3 days later. And that's not what we want. So every time I was checking information, for example, the numbers, and I found some examples like, I don't know, for the number 3, 3 chats bleu 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 bleu. Okay, what means chat? Oh, it's a cat. So a cat is a chat. So I tried to make it interesting the way I'm gonna tell you later. I tried to create a connection in my brain. But I was not actively looking for words, I just got the words that were given to me. And about the present tense, well, it's been freaking difficult. It's been the hardest thing to learn by far. I've got my own method to learn conjugations, which is a very good method. It's the method that I use to teach my students. It's a method where basically what we do is we get a look at all the verbs conjugated in front of us, and we start to find the patterns. For example, you go like, oh, this verb gets conjugated like this one, but you change this instead of this. Okay, and then you put it in the same category. Then you go like, oh, this verb works like that one and this one, but this one is a little bit different. So you get the 3 of them and you put it in a category. So when you do this, which is a titanic work, it's something huge, you end up having some categories that help you memorize things better. I did this for Spanish. In fact, I've got a complete course on my website, polyglotpanda.com. The course is called Master of Spanish Conjugations, where I teach the conjugations with this method. Basically, my way of approaching conjugations, what it does is it makes it more memorable. Then you need to practice. Practice is there. You cannot avoid practicing. So basically that's what I did. I got a piece of paper and I started to get the conjugations of every verb in French and started to find the patterns. And after a lot of hours, I'm telling you, a lot of hours, I end up having something like this, which is not quite clear, but then you transport this into a more memorable thing, like a table. And this is the output. And this is not even the final form for this. This is just a table and it's not that memorable. I'm gonna turn this into something more visual, something like a cheat sheet that I can put on the wall and check every time I need to conjugate a verb. Honestly, it takes a huge amount of hours, a huge amount of work to do this, but it works super well. But all this work would be useless if I was not moving all that information from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. If you're one of my students or you're related somehow to me and my method, you know that it's very important to understand that when you learn something new, you put that piece of information into the short-term memory. On the other hand, the long-term memory is where information stays for a longer period. Careful! Not forever. I tell this to all my students. Long-term memory does not mean that we memorize things forever. Does not exist such a thing as memorizing something forever. Why? Because the goal of the brain is to forget. I'm gonna say that again because it's like a Bible truth. The goal of the brain is to forget. Right now you're watching this video and right now every second that goes by you are forgetting stuff. You need to understand how your brain works. Every piece of information that you know, it's a connection between two neurons. You've got neuron A, neuron B, and a connection. That connection is called neuronal synapses. Those connections fade over time, disappear over time, get weaker over time. So the short-term memory is nothing more, nothing less than a connection that is very thin. So it can be broken in 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 weeks. A long-term memory is a connection between neurons that is very thick. So no matter how much time it goes by, it gets thinner, but it's there. It cannot be broken. Why I'm telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because it's very important that you understand that when you learn a language, learning, practicing, memorizing stuff is just half of the work. The other half is to make sure that those connections that you created stay there for the rest of your life. And basically there's 2 things you need to do. On one hand, you've got mnemonics. This nice word that sounds funny, mnemonics. It's basically any technique that allows your thoughts to be moved from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. Every single tiny thing I learn in French, I'm making a mnemonic. Everything. And on the other hand, we've got the spaced repetition system. The spaced repetition system is a system, I'm not gonna go over the whole thing about it because I've got some videos on YouTube explaining how this works, but basically is a very powerful method to keep the information in your brain. So you delay the fading, you delay the way that the connection gets broken. And for that, I use a very good software that is called RemNote. In this software, basically you can take notes of anything, like a book you're reading, university classes, a language, anything, and you can create automatic flashcards. Then every day you need to review the flashcards that you created. When you review a flashcard, the app is going to ask you how easy it was to remember that flashcard. So depending on how easy it was or how difficult it was, that flashcard will be hidden for a certain amount of time. So the more difficult a flashcard is, the sooner it will appear. The easier it is for you to remember it, the more time it will take. That means that every day you're going to review only the flashcards that you have to review. That is, those flashcards, those pieces of information that are just about to be broken in your head. Again, I don't have time here to explain the whole thing about how this works, but I can tell you that if you ask me, Jose, after learning 5 languages, what is your biggest, best, most powerful advice to learn a new language? No doubt, I would tell you, use the spaced repetition system. And now I'm supposed to give you my level of French. Of course, you won't find that much in this video. I mean, hopefully in the next video, in the next update, I'm gonna give you more French. I have learned the numbers, so I can count to you up to 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, This is like a tongue twister. I can also say basic sentences with basic verbs. For example, bonjour, ça va? Je m'appelle José Martí. J'habite à Spagne. I don't know how to say Spain in French. À l'Espagne, that would be Italian. J'ai 31 ans. Je voudrais apprendre le français. Je veux parler le français avec un bon niveau, a good level. Crap! And I think that's it. So now, what's the next steps? Basically, I'm going to now create my work plan. I'm going to divide French into listening, reading, writing, speaking, fluency, pronunciation, and vocabulary. I'm going to decide how many days I want to work on my French per week. I want to decide how many minutes I want to spend each one of those days. And I'm gonna make the calculation. I'm gonna make the math. So that way I will know exactly how much time I need to spend on my listening, on my reading, on my writing, on my speaking, on my fluency, and I will start working that way. On the next update, I will tell you everything about the golden rule of my method, how we can improve our listening, reading, writing, speaking skills so we can learn a language fast and effectively. Now it's your time. Remember, we're doing all these challenges to help a charity called Translators Without Borders. So if you find that this challenge is interesting, if you find that learning my method is interesting, if you find that it's entertaining watching me learn languages, please consider donating money and betting for this cause. If you don't know what I'm talking about here with the betting and donating, you can watch the original video. I give you the link here. And that's all for now. Ciao, pandas!